Hello again, everyone, and welcome to The Crusher. I'm your host, Josh Brewster. You know, when I started this monstrosity about 7 months ago, one of my first guests was Daniella Bloom, and I am so happy to bring her back here today. She has a lot going on, and she is a psychotherapist and an activist. And she's also a very interesting talk host. She has a new podcast called Let's Talk Uncensored. And she is also a best-selling author. Her latest is The World Where I Belong, which is geared toward young people. But she works on interpersonal relationships and couples counseling and things of this nature. And I am so honored to have Daniella Bloom back again. Daniella, you were one of my favorite interview subjects thus far, and I welcome you back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. Well, listen, Daniella, one of the way I met you was a friend of mine suggested you because you're involved in an effort called Jexit. Now, just to refresh the audience's memory, you've heard, of course, of Brexit, Britain exiting the European Union. Well, Jexit is Jews exiting the Democratic Party. Count me as one of those. So I want to start off today, Danielle. There's a lot to talk about because of the situation in Israel and also on our university campuses and elsewhere. But let's talk for a few moments about Jexit, because this is something that is near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. Well, I am, true to the term, a former liberal. I didn't vote for Obama once. I voted for him twice. So I speak liberal. And I still have pretty liberal values. I have no issue with gay marriage. I am pro-choice with conditions. But I guess you could say I was red-pilled right around the time of COVID. And I saw how they were portraying our then sitting president, President Trump. How they were perpetuating a very false negative of the MAGA party being all about white supremacy and racism, when I would go to the Beverly Hills rallies and I would see the opposite. I would see a diversity of people, black, white, brown, LGBT, everything in between for Trump. And I realized that, the same propaganda and tactics that I saw the pro-pallies do when it came to Israel was the same techniques BLM and the legacy media was doing to Americans. And I became and also the vaccine mandates. You mess with my inherent freedoms, you mess with my children, and you mess with Israel. Now you have my attention. And I've become a free-thinking, we the people patriot ever since. And I love where I landed.
Well, I'll tell you what, Daniella, we're going to start with a statistic, an important statistic. When I had you on the air last time,
that's right.
I said, I'm going to write this down, and I did write it down. Now, here's where we stand. Latest polling shows, the poll is Daniella and me. I asked the question, how many Jewish voters would exit the Democratic Party, would vote against Joe Biden? You can just say for Trump, let's say. I guess now you could say for RFK, but who would exit the Democratic Party? Now, I am rather cynical. Daniella is a little more optimistic than I am, but I'm rather cynical. And I said the Jewish vote, which often goes as much as 80% for the Democrats, it's almost as important as our religion is to vote Democratic. I left the party about 25 years ago. I said even after October 7th, I think Jewish voters will still go 70% to the Democrats. Daniella said she thinks it's only going to be 50%. How do you feel about that prediction today?
I still think it's true. I still think, there's a lot of Democrats waking up. I see them on TikTok. I see them in Hollywood. They're using their platforms like Michael Rappaport and other comedians, Amy Schumer, that they're awake John Lovitz, a lot of the old school comedians are coming out and saying, "What happened to my party?" You have Elon Musk making statements like, all of the left at this point is so enabling of anti-Semitism. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
And I think October 7th has woken and continues to wake up a lot of liberals who were just late to the unfortunate party, that this has been a long time coming, and it's just come to a head now.
Well, indeed. So let's talk about our president. Just last week, he makes a speech on Holocaust Remembrance Day. He makes a speech that's very empathetic toward the Israelis. Okay, it's Holocaust Remembrance Day. He's in front of a Jewish audience. It's a day of great gravity. Okay, and within about 24 hours, he's back, in my view, playing both sides, and talking about how he wants to cut off aid to Israel if they go into Gaza. They're going to Rafah. And I look at it the way Douglas Murray looks at it, which is, of course, they're going in there. You don't put out 80% of a fire. I perceive, Daniella, that Joe Biden is very concerned about places like Minnesota and Michigan, and he's also concerned about the lunatic fringe, i.e. the Squad and all their followers. And I think the Jewish people are not quite getting it. He's playing both sides of the aisle. That's my view. I don't like what's coming out of Biden's mouth. I don't like what's coming out of the administration. And again, I don't think you put out 80% of the fire when it comes to Hamas. What are your thoughts?
No, I completely agree. I think we've been watching for years how Biden can say the right things and then go and his actions speak far louder than words. And that's the new joke. His two-state solution is Minnesota and Michigan. It's his two-state solution. He's absolutely pandering. That's what he does best. And it's pissing everybody off. And I'll tell you something funny, Josh. The encampments and the college protesting, there was one college in the South, I don't know which one, but there was a big group of people. They were all Trump supporters with American flags, and they were chanting, F Joe Biden. Right across the way, there was the pro-Pally camp. Guess what they were chanting? F Joe Biden. Finally, Biden has united the country. It's taken 4 years, but we're all on the same page. But the best part is, that's fine. Call him Genocide Joe, say F Joe Biden, and vote for Trump. Or RFK, depending on how dirty they play.
Well, I want to get to RFK in a couple minutes. I also want to get to TikTok in a couple minutes. But right now, the thing we really need to talk about that has really gotten crazy since we spoke in November, which is now 6 months ago or so. What has happened on our campuses of late is, in my view, out and out anti-Semitism. Jewish students being up from going where they need to go, being called terrible things. We've had instances of Jewish students being punched. I think it'll escalate. But I'm reminded of an image that's circulating online now. It's an image in 1938 of a bunch of Nazis linking arms, and they're stopping Jews from attending the university in Austria. Now, this is 1938. This is before the final solution. But, Daniella, I have to think a lot of people are appalled, and a lot of people see that this is anti-Semitism. But I'm also concerned that if this was any other minority enduring this, the response would not include quite as much equivocation as I see. What do you think?
Sure. For sure. I mean, you would not need context if you said that there should be a genocide of African Americans or LGBT or trans. It would be full stop. You're done. You're let go. It always seems to be the case. Diversity, equality, and inclusion does not include the Jews. It also sometimes doesn't include the Asians. Any minority group who is succeeding, who's not oppressed, does not count for DEI. And that is a travesty, and that is double standards. That is certainly not American. And a lot of people, including the Christian community, is appalled, and they stand with the Jews. more so than the self-hating Jews. With self-hating Jews, who needs anti-Semites? So we can talk about that too.
No, well, let's talk about that right now. One thing I've said for a long time, Daniela, is I would trust the fate of Israel in the hands of American Christians for the most part, long before I would trust it in the hands of about 70% of the American Jewish population. I hate to say it. I just hate to say it. I think that Christians are far better friends to the Jewish people than the Jewish people may be accustomed to thinking that way. It's one of those things, Daniela, where if you talk to people 50, 60, 70 years old or older, it's a bit of a different world when they were growing up versus now. I really think the Christian world really understands that there's the saying amongst the jihadists, first the ones who have Sabbath on Saturday, and then the ones who have Sabbath on Sunday.
You know, what's so interesting, almost 100 years ago, my grandfather, he rest in peace, was a medical student at USC in the 1930s, late 1920s. He had to change his name from Solomon to Selner to get into med school because there was tons of anti-Semitism back there. In fact, Jews and African Americans couldn't even live in places like Beverly Hills until 1946. The Christian community and the Jewish community were not in sync back then. Boy, are they in sync now. And it couldn't be at a more important time. I had the privilege of spending a week in Nashville at the NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Network. And it's basically for the conservative news and entertainment world. And I got to spend a week with 4,500 Christians, and I got to tell you, it was life-changing. I could not believe not only was everyone pro-America and also pro-Trump, and Trump did speak later on that during the conference, but people were so unapologetically pro-Israel. They began every event with, before we begin, let us ask our Heavenly Father for our prayer for Israel, for our Jewish brothers and sisters. It moved me to tears so many more times than I could count. And I remember thinking, it's going to be okay. The Christians are with us. We are aligned. They get it. And not to mention, Josh, I was treated like royalty there. I mean, they kept telling me I was the apple of God's eye. I am the chosen. I mean, I don't get this reception amongst the Jews. Half of them tell me I have, I'm crazy for voting for Trump. They have Trump deranged syndrome. But I love the Christians. Our Judeo-Christian values are aligned. Our love of our country, our inherent freedoms, what this country was founded on. We value personal accountability. We value forward thinking, which I think has really been lost. I think as a former liberal, that liberal value of forward thinking, of free thinking, of critical thinking is gone. It's really about groupthink. If you're not with us, you're against us. There's nothing free about being a part of the Democrat Party today.
Well, we discussed this last time, and that is the line between liberal and left has to be made very
Alan Dershowitz just brought that up to me. Yeah.
I know Dershowitz was out here with Mitch and Bruce, and I know you were there at the Jewish Republican Alliance. I wish I could have been there, but it's leftism, folks. It's not liberalism. If you were a liberal, you could debate your views. You could accept a divergent opinion. It's leftism. And I hope I'm not 50 years into the grave by the time Americans figure this out, Daniella.
I think they are. I think when it hits home, and I think for many it was Israel that hit home, the double standards, the watching Claudine Gay from Harvard say, it depends on the context regarding genocide. I mean, this is right in people's faces now. The fact that I was at the UCLA protest last Sunday with the encampments, and it was literally a scene out of a movie. Literally, there was a line down the middle. One side was the pro-pallies and their keffiyehs, their masks, everything's covered, right? There's no American flags. They have their horrible signs. And it's just so eerie and scary and not normal and too organized and scripted. And then you go to the other side and it's just this booming light from the pro-Israel side of Israeli flags, American flags, singing for peace. You know, our light is bright. And I think if you were an alien and you knew nothing about the conflict, forget about even an alien, you just were observing the energy, the dynamics. It's very clear where the light shines. And I just can't believe in 2024, where Jewish students are not permitted to go into entrances, even though they've paid to be there, even though our taxpayers are funding public universities like UCLA, they have to find the entrance that's allowed for the Jews. Like what?
That's insane.
How did we get here? I mean, it's really
Daniella, fear. Fear is, you're a psychologist. Fear is, I believe, if it's not number one, it's number two motivator of humans. Fear is, it's just so basic. And here it is. These academics, the academia is in horrible shape. These people have no courage at all. I mean, look, you know, the right to speak does not include pitching tents and occupying anything. I mean, it doesn't include stopping people from going where they want to go. Right. And also, by the way, there's anti-Klan laws. The Klan used to wear masks because, God forbid, anybody in the community found out who they were, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? So you're wearing masks? Well, don't we have Klan laws?
This is Antifa on steroids, yes.
But these academics have Daniella, they have no balls, okay? Right.
Well, I want to share with you what I learned about that. Alan, actually, who's an academic, taught at Harvard. Alan Dershowitz, for anyone who doesn't know, was he made it very clear why the progressive colleges continue to be progressive, because the hires for the Jewish studies and Israeli studies programs tend to be the rejects who cannot get any jobs at the universities in Israel or any other place, but because they're the outlier and they're anti-Israel, they get jobs right away, because most of the funding of universities actually comes from Qatar. So no university is going to hire a loud and proud conservative or Zionist professor. But if you're an outlier in the wrong way and don't represent such a fringe, we want you. Here's your salary and benefits and all that. But I also wanted to say one more thing, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It's, fear. He who controls the media controls the masses, and that is by fear. We saw what happened with COVID and the vaccines and the lockdowns. It's not just fear, though. The second component is the human need of belonging, of tribalism. People will literally ignore the reality of truth right in front of their face if it meant they could still belong and they have the support of the groupthink. And this is what I'm seeing more than anything else with the rise of mental health. There's so many things going on with our youth, that this idea of belonging to the fighting the oppressor and going against the man and fighting against the colonialist, the Zionist.
This is all Marxism, by the way.
It's all
that's all
propaganda. Yeah.
By the way, that's all Marxism, you know. Everything you just
yes,
it's Marxism.
It's definitely organized. There's definitely a strategy to it, and it's working to an extent. I think it's working right temporarily, but after the encampments, there's a lot of people who are seeing the desecration of statues, of our flags. They're crossing the lines. I mean, anytime this happened in a college in the South, it got shut down immediately. Don't mess with the South. Don't mess with the patriots of the South, of the Christians. And I'll tell you what, Josh, many Jewish parents like myself, when we think about colleges for the future of our children, it's no longer Ivy Leagues. It's the South. It's Texas, Florida.
you just you just asked the question I was about to ask. I have a son who goes to UC San Diego, and I have a son who's a junior right now in high school.
Yeah.
And I've said, go find, just, you want to get educated, find the least expensive quality place, go get your degree. God knows there's no point going to the Ivy. So I have to ask you, I was going to ask you, has this changed your mind for your own children in
Oh,
the future? Because
1,000.
it's insane. I would rather see
Yeah.
you go to Middle Tennessee State University. Seriously, because
Yeah.
what the hell are you going to learn? You're going to go to Yale for $75,000 and be taught that Israel shouldn't exist, and
And
that
that America is horrible, anti-America, right?
the
Yeah.
and the oppressor versus the oppressed, all
Yeah.
this Marxist bullshit. I'm going to send you there. So how has this changed your mind?
100%. When I saw these beautiful pictures from, I think, SMU and other Southern colleges of hundreds and hundreds of Israeli flags planted in the grass to honor every victim's life that lost on October 7th, and that they honored the hostages. Wow. The first thought that came to mind is my child will be safe there.
Where is this?
The fact that we have to think like that today as Jewish parents is crazy. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Where is this, Daniela? Where did you?
In Texas. There's
SMU.
a bunch of them. There's some beautiful pictures. I'm like, okay, that's where she's going to consider. She'll consider that now. She'll consider that now. They literally put these colleges on the maps for so many Jewish families, especially conservative Jewish families.
Listen, Daniela, as you know, there was a time, and you could talk to Dershowitz about this. There was a time when they had Jew quote Ivies. Okay, they told the Jews, "We have enough of you. Go away. We've met our Jew quota." Okay?
That's what they did to the Asians, and they sued.
So things change and change again for the Jewish people. They change and change again, and anti-Semitism doesn't go away. I'm sorry if people don't want to hear that, but it doesn't go away.
Well, there will always be a scapegoat, just like in relationships. There's always a scapegoat. But it doesn't mean there's not real issues. The Jews have always been the canary in the coal mine, whether it's from the left or from the right. But I'm grateful for our allies, allies like Douglas Murray, who sees things as clear as day, Megyn Kelly, Jeremy Boring, and many other leaders in this community who have huge platforms, who unapologetically stand with Israel and with the Jewish people. And that's the only thing we have in our control. If I let myself get so upset over the horrendous propaganda and misguided thinking of the conflict that literally, like 6 months ago, I would say 85% of these people couldn't even find Israel on the map to save their lives. They still don't understand, how many Jews there are in the world, and that Israel actually has 30% of its population as Arab. Like, they just don't even have basic understanding of the reality on the ground. And, it's the finest gaslighting I've ever seen. To call Jews the oppressor, to call Jews the colonizer, to call Jews white, talk about ethnic cleansing. My own family, my father's family was ethnically cleansed, their Jewish family, out of Iraq. Where's all of the Jewish populations of the Arab countries? Where did they go? Why did they all leave?
People have no education at all. I mean, like, just to know how many Sephardic Jews were ushered out of most of the Arab world, and they have no concept at all of the nearly 1 million Jews who had to flee the Arab world to come to Israel. No concept. So let me ask you this. You had mentioned, there's a couple of things I want to get to today. You had mentioned being part of an effort to promote the pro-Israel position via TikTok. And I know that the Chinese Communist Party that runs that thing, they have algorithms that make sure that the the anti-American point of view is pushed. You can read this in Peter Schweitzer's books, but also the pro-Palestine thing is like 100-1 or whatever it is. Tell me about your efforts on TikTok. I'm allergic to TikTok, so you have to film me.
It's not for everyone. I like to say I'm on TikTok, so you don't have to be. It's really not for the faint of heart. You'll get a lot of people will get very upset. Because people are just shocked. It's a form of masochism, and I don't like masochism. But, there's a core group of pro-Israel creators, and Jewish and non-Jewish, by the way, who just decide to be on the front lines of this masochism, going into these TikTok lives, which sometimes there could be thousands and thousands of people listening. And we don't really do it to try to change the minds of people who are so far brainwashed on like Pro-Pally 101. But for the people who really are curious, who are confused, because it is really confusing when you see Jews standing with Hamas. It's confusing. And you don't know. And when they're seeing videos and they don't understand that a lot of it's staged or a lot of it is old videos from Syria, they don't really understand how propaganda is used by the Pally camp. They don't understand that there has never been a country of Palestine. So they're new to this conflict and they want to make an informed decision. So we try for those people to give them as much information as possible. And at this point, I just encourage people to actually listen to really well done debates with Dennis Prager, with Ben Shapiro, with Destiny, even, who's on the left, but he's a liberal. He's on the left. He's a liberal, but he's so pro-Israel. I think once you study the history, it's just, you're an idiot not to be pro-Israel. And pro-Israel does not mean anti-Palestinian. It just means in order for the Palestinians to thrive, we have to have a serious partner at the table, not a terrorist regime who believes that Israel does not have a right to exist. And there's a responsibility and accountability to that, because I think what the world is doing to the Palestinians is what the white liberals have done to the blacks. This soft bigotry of low expectations. And
that's right.
There's so many parallels between the BLM movement and the Pro-Pally movement. It's unbelievable.
It's all part of the same. It's all part of the same thing. It's this whole movement between BLM and the pro-Hamas crowd, and all of this is a Marxist movement. It is a Marxist movement, folks. As far as I wrote something about the soft racism of low expectations. It's on Substack. It's called One Man's Hilton is Another Man's Terror Tunnel. Look, they've been in charge of Gaza for 18, 19 years. If it doesn't look like Tel Aviv, it's your fault. It's not the Jews' fault. It's their fault. And no one to expect anything to ever change, or that they are responsible for it. This is the worst kind of liberal racism, for lack of a better. It's exactly what it is. There's liberals like Bill Maher who have spoken about it. You're digging tunnels. Israel's building skyscrapers. You have Arab people excelling in all the sciences, mathematics, technology. For God's sake, you wasted all your resources on digging rabbit holes. Mm-hmm. You should have skyscrapers and resorts by now. It's been almost 20 years.
Yeah. Unfortunately, making peace is not good for business. Palestinians continue to get the most amount of aid from all over the world, including America. There's no checks and balances. There's no accountability. There's no new hospitals, no universities. But the founders of Hamas are living quite well in Qatar. But no one's
always. But let me tell you, you're right. But you know what? Immense wealth would flow from enterprise.
It
and
would.
If you wanted
like
Gaza, if you wanted Gaza to look like Dubai, elect me. Mm-hmm. I'll make the place look like Dubai. In 10 years, it'll look like Dubai. I swear to God, it will. But anyway, all right.
Well,
let's move on.
There was actually, an Arab entrepreneur, I think after 2005, when Hamas was elected, before they became so radicalized, who did have plans to literally turn Gaza into a little Dubai, and it was kiboshed immediately.
Yeah, no.
Because, we're not allowed to talk about the real caliphate root of Muslim jihadism, that, Jews should not be in Muslim controlled land, because from their point of view, if Muslims were there, it's always Muslim. And you cannot negotiate with that mentality. You can't make peace with that, because they'll always want to take over, and they will always justify terrorism. And so it goes. So we stand with our allies.
Well, let's talk about an alternative candidate who's out there. RFK Jr. is out there. I will tell you, there's things that he believes about the environment that I think are so completely wrong. But I am a fan of his. I won't be voting for him, but I'm a fan. And one thing I know he said recently to someone who asked him about this so-called genocide, which is pure nonsense. He said there were 750,000 Arab Palestinians back in 1948, because now there's 7 million. When was the genocide?
Yeah.
So why don't you give me your thoughts on RFK Jr. and what he means?
I'm a huge fan of RFK. I've had the pleasure of meeting with him, speaking with him personally. He is very clear on his stance for Israel. He's been consistent throughout. He sees the situation exactly for what it is. Israel has a right to exist and defend itself. Israel is our ally, and they absolutely have a right to end Hamas. And they need a partner in this. And he's definitely pro-Israel. There's a lot of things about him that I like. I like that he's shining light on big pharma, and we cannot argue with the fact that children today, everyone knows a family with a child who's either on the spectrum, has ADHD, has sensory issues, has food allergies, and a lot has shifted since the vaccine schedule has tripled since 1989. So he's shining light on that. He's not anti-vax. Okay. I'm also, my kids have been vaccinated, all the scheduled ones, but he was very much against COVID vaccine and the COVID mandates, especially for populations that did not need it.
He was right.
He's also very anti-establishment, pro-free speech, pro non-censorship. There's a lot of things about him that are very Trump-like. What does concern me, though, which I was very unhappy about, was his choice for VP. Nicole Shanahan. I think she's a mama bear, but she knows nothing about foreign policy, and we are in some very, very vulnerable times. My first choice, by the way, RFK asked her and she said no, so I'm hoping she's holding out for Trump, is Tulsi Gabbard. I think she will bring in the woman. She will bring in the moderate vote. She's phenomenal. I also had a chance to meet her last week. I'm a huge fan of hers. But why I say don't discount RFK. I don't put anything past the left. I mean, look what they're trying to do to Trump now. I mean, they're throwing the kitchen sink at him. Thank God nothing is sticking. But they have more tricks up their sleeves, short of going to World War III. So elections will be paused. So, RFK is a good backup. People needs to have peace of mind that he is very pro-Israel. I know there have been some questions in the past because of the company that he was in, but that does not affect his own beliefs. He's been consistently pro-Israel. And let's not forget that his own father had very pro-Israel stances and was ultimately assassinated by a Palestinian. I mean, one could say it was a cover-up for the CIA, but either way, it was a good sell because he was very pro-Israel.
It's very real. It's very real. I want to finish up because I know that I got to get you out of here, but I'm just going to ask you, what makes a sequoia?
What's that?
What makes a sequoia fall?
Oh, what makes a sequoia fall? Did we talk about this last time? Yes, it was the little termites from within. Little termites from within.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little termites on our campuses. Let's finish with this, Daniella, because I need to do about 9 more shows with you this month just to get through it all. Okay. Let's talk uncensored. Tell me about this project.
Sure. So I realize there is a huge gap in the market for people like myself who have been former liberals, and now we, the people patriots, we're the mama bears, we're the papa bears. We're married, we're divorced, maybe we're single, but we are the ones trying to get the country back on track. We're at the school board meetings. We're calling our assembly members. We're the ones active. And we don't have anyone talking about lifestyle content without a woke agenda from a female perspective. There's so much news heavy content, but we need to get back into, everyday topics that affect most Americans: marriage, divorce, children on the spectrum, what empowered dating is today. How do you go from online to offline dating success? What real intimacy is? All of the stuff that you maybe from days past we would hear from an Oprah, but hearing it from someone where you have peace of mind, that you can trust them. Maybe they've been through it themselves, because I've certainly been through a lot personally as well. We need to get back into these conversations, because it starts from our own homes, our own relationships, our own families. We can bloom exactly where we're planted. And I believe truly that's how we get the country back on track.
All right. Go get yourself a copy of The World Where I Belong for your young people. And also go be on the lookout for Let's Talk Uncensored. And no matter what you do in this life, go to DanielaBloom.com and all will be revealed. All will be revealed. So thank you, Daniella, for appearing on The Crutcher again today.
My pleasure.